All right, winter ready? I hope you're ready for winter weather because what we're going to look at now is some of the influences of what prepares our winter weather for us here across northeastern Ohio and northwestern Pennsylvania. Now, our biggest influence of snow for the winter typically comes from lake effect snows in this region of Ohio and northwestern Pennsylvania, but we also have to deal with Alberta clippers. Those are the fast moving storms out of the northwest, and then of course the big snows at times from the east coast storms. Now, this is your average snow through the entire winter. We typically get 62.7 inches at the airport. The bulk of that coming especially late December, January, and February. Let's talk about some of the influences of our typical winter weather patterns here at home. Teleconnections. These are the connections all around the world that drive our winter weather patterns, some of which the North Atlantic Oscillation, you've got the Arctic Oscillation, and then, of course, you have El Nino and La Nina. You've heard a lot about that. Now, a typical El Nino winter, which is what we're going into here at home, traditionally pushes dry, warm air across the northern United States, and it stays cool and stormy and wet across the southern United States. And what this means is the sea surface temperatures in the Pacific shift off into the eastern Pacific, which drives those patterns to cause that type of winter weather in the United States. 1997-98, big El Nino year. Also 2015 and 2016, an El Nino year as well. And those patterns, of course, driving the winter weather here at home, keeping those big storms rolling across the south with that warmer air to the north. So typical El Nino, you've got a strong southern jet stream, and what that does is it produces these big low pressure systems that roll up the east coast at times, keeping the south wet. Our problem is it's warm enough that we get into more freezing rain and icy type of events, and then once the storm passes through, we get into lake effect snows on the backside of the system. So even though a stronger El Nino type of a year is warmer, we still get lake effect here. This year is a little different. What's known as a Modoki El Nino. That basically takes those warm waters and puts it into the central Pacific instead of the east. That changes things for us. And if we continue to go into that type of a pattern, which it does look like we're doing, that will drive colder air southward. So even though that typical El Nino year keeps warm air here, if we get into this Modoki phase, which it looks like we're heading toward, that means more cold air, which will feed these storms because it will still be an active storm system to our south. So we'll be watching for summer bigger storms into the winter. Then, of course, that will drive more lake effect snows here at home. What I did was went back and looked over some of the last episodes of Modoki type El Ninos, and this is where we're going this year. Typically in November, we have near average snowfall. As you get into December, we have below average snowfall. January and February's typically have above average snowfall, and then below average into March. How about the temperatures? Well, here we go. If we stay in this Modoki current as we go into the winter time, we traditionally have a warmer than normal November. December goes both ways, but it ends up averaging right around normal, and then heading into January, February, and March, turning cold. Take a look at this. Some of the coldest Februaries on record were in Modoki El Nino events. Remember 2015? That is the coldest February on record. Also, the snowiest February on record, 2010, a Modoki El Nino. The third snowiest February on record, 2015. And the fourth snowiest February on record, 2003. All Modoki type El Ninos. So a weak El Nino traditionally means a little colder and a little more snow as we get into January, February, and at least into the start of March.